Hello and welcome to Light Warrior Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Can, author of the #1 best-selling book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower: How to Harness Your Gifts, Fulfill Your Purpose, and Create a Life of Joy. And if you're brand new to my channel, would love for you to subscribe if you're on YouTube watching this to the channel. And then also love to give you my free gift, which is the Sensitive Soul Empowerment Guide, the 3 ways of navigating your way to more peace, positivity, and personal power. You can get that as a free download at sensitivesoulguide.com. Now, today's guest on Light Warrior Radio, I'm super excited to speak with Dr. Jeffrey Benton because we actually met in January of 2023 at the Consciousness Conference. And he just had like a lot of people around him because I think it was giving some freebie adjustments there, and got to know him a little bit, and this fabulous book called The Emotional Trauma Release Technique: The Ultimate System for Releasing Life Traumas. And of course, a lot of people in the Sensitive Soul community are talking about trauma release these days. Actually, it's even all over Facebook. So this is perfect because people are recognizing that trauma is not just an event. Trauma gets stored in the body, in our emotions, in our consciousness, and there are ways which we can release them. And so we're going to highlight Dr. Benton's work today and the wonderful things that he's doing. And like I said, I didn't get a personal chance to work with him. There was like a lineup to see him. We were there, with Marianne Williamson, Greg Braden, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Anita Morjani, some of the greats that I absolutely love. And so it was fantastic. I got to meet Dr. Benton, and let me share you a little bit about him. So he's born and raised in LA, in California. Went and received his doctorate in biology in California State University, and his doctorate in chiropractic from the Southern California University of Health Sciences. He's a licensed chiropractor. He was featured in the CBS Nightly News. He's also a certified traditional naturopath. He developed this book. We're talking about the emotional trauma release technique. He's also a qualified medical examiner for California. He has applied clinical nutritionist, also a certification, co-host to a health and wellness radio show, KTYM 1280 AM, named as one of the top chiropractors in LA Magazine in 2018-19, winner of the Health Professional of the Year in 2019 by EZTV. He's a proud father of 2 amazing boys, Isaac and Zachary, and he's also trained in applied concussion neurology, so lots of different trainings and certifications. And when he's not doing all that amazing work, he's a West Coast swing dancer, certified scuba diver, so that's really fun. Dr. Benton, welcome to Light Warrior Radio.
Why, thank you. Thank you for having me. It can be great to speaking to you and your people about all the fun stuff that I get to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I can tell when I met you that this is fun for you. It's work, of course, but it's definitely fun for you. And maybe we can go back a little bit in your history. How does the younger Jeff decide, first of all, to be a doctor of chiropractic, and then now kind of veering off into these other less, common areas of chiropractic practice?
Okay, so the young Jeff, the very young Jeff, got curious about holistic healing when back in high school. We had to write an essay or do some research, and the topic that I chose was holistic medicine. And I'd say that was probably the seed that was planted back then, holistic medicine versus non-holistic medicine. And I still have that essay that planted that seed.
Wow.
And then as I was going through my undergraduate, I was working for a very successful orthopedic surgeon's office. And so I saw, here's what orthopedic surgeons do. They'll do surgery, they'll do medication, and they'll do physical therapy. So that's what they did. Great. So I worked there while going to my undergraduate, right by Cedars-Sinai, by the medical towers. And it was really good. It was a nice, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, went to school. Tuesday, Thursday, I was able to work there. And then I think there's something inside me that thought that there's more to it than just those 3 modalities. And then my cousin, a few years older than me, is at that time was a chiropractor doing well in Santa Barbara. And to be honest, I didn't really want to take the MCATs. I didn't want to
I
have to
don't blame you.
I didn't want to have to regurgitate a bunch of trigonometry and algebra that I
That
didn't
was me
care
with the
for in the
LSAT.
first place. Um, so, but I always liked the human body. I think, I'm a fixer. Before I became a chiropractic doctor, I used to work on cars. Was an automotive technician. I'm a
No
fixer kind of guy.
way. Wow.
And I think that the human body is probably the most complex jigsaw puzzle that you can put together. And the more you understand how it works, then the better the outcome is going to be.
Right.
So I've been pursuing that for a number of decades now, and that sort of led me to develop this original healing technique and the emotional trauma release technique, the ultimate system for releasing life traumas. I think it's a necessary tool to add to everyone's doctor bag, licensed or not, because everyone's a healer and they're all looking for new knowledge of what to do. And this is a medication-free approach to release some trauma. That's everyone has some trauma. If you're going to be living in the world today, trauma is part of going through this life. And then and I really believe that aging is really the result of so much trauma that we've been collecting, and then our body sort of hits a peak of how much trauma it can sort of collect energetically.
Yep.
And then it has to reroute certain things. We have major trauma, like Christopher Reeves, Superman. He had a horse riding accident, fractured his upper cervical vertebra. He was paraplegic, ever since that. So that's a major trauma. But we have a lot of minor traumas, looking at your cell phone for hours at a time with your neck bent forward,
as I'm trying to sit up straight.
sitting up straight, breathing well. Everyone has their life traumas, and then I say that trauma has different flavors. There's like blunt force trauma, getting into a car accident, tripping and falling down. There's chemical trauma. We are bombarded by more and more things chemically every day. Emotional trauma. Someone did you wrong. It's not fair. It's not right. It doesn't fit well with our soul. Radiation, EMFs, 5G, these things all have an effect on our bodies. You know what I've never read, by the way? I've never read a study how electric cars can impact our body, because now you're surrounding yourself with battery packs. Instead of having an internal combustion engine, now you have, sitting on just thousands and thousands of pounds of battery packs. And I just heard yesterday that whenever they start to recycle some of these things, some of these electrical components in these electric cars are actually radioactive. Just like that sink in.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, it's a lot of these policies and encouragements and things are not necessarily about health.
No.
And sometimes we have to follow where the money goes.
I don't know, and I don't know when in the 70s or 80s that tipping point from environmental protection and finding big business for polluting to like, just let it go, cares, I mean, that's part of that whole depopulation agenda that we won't talk about. But
well, most of my folks are like leaning forward.
What's that?
Most of my folks are like leaning forward to see what you think about that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
We'd have to have like a private Zoom session. And oh,
Yeah, yeah,
by the way, Zoom now says that they can take any part of our conversation and mix and match it.
well, yeah, I think I didn't read the policy myself, so I really need to do that. Is my understanding is if you use their app, then yes, their AI app, then definitely then that will capture your conversation and reuse it to learn, right, how to do this well. And other people say, well, I don't trust Zoom because they're owned by a certain party, not in the country. But I'm like, you know what? There's an underlying agenda that who knows what the real, true, down deep what the reality is. So everyone's
Sure.
doing the best they can. And but then even the knowledge, Dr. Benton, about the possibility that, for example, we've been lied to, or when they look on Facebook and their friend, got a jibby jabby and ended up with an autoimmune disease or died of, cancer.
Yeah.
That's trauma, right? Maybe they
Yeah, that's a
even just the
huge trauma,
release
right?
of truth, even if it's supposedly for the highest and greatest good, could cause a trauma response in someone who is
Sure.
not yet, quote unquote, awake to what's going on, because they can't believe that their government or whoever, would do these things. So that's a trauma response too, right?
Sure. Yeah, trauma. Yeah, governmental trauma.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah, and
it's
speaking of the cars, I had the exact same question about the electronic cars, but even sitting in my dad's relatively new RAV4, and like my car is 2012, and I'm trying
yeah,
to find a car that's old enough that doesn't radiate that much, and his car is more recent,
mm,
and the computer. It's not
yeah,
even a hybrid, just the computer with the display and everything. I've sat in there and immediately was like hit with a wall because I am very empathic and sensitive, and I literally
yeah,
had to put my shields up, right, to be able to. I actually stuck a little device
yeah.
kind of underneath just to mitigate some of that effect. But definitely, my patients previously. We Some people have a Prius, around here is like one of the first most popular cars, and she would just get ill,
Right.
sitting in that car. So, yeah,
Uh,
amazing what kinds of trauma that people go through. They don't even think that is a trauma, big or small.
yeah, you want if some of your listeners find that they're having prostate issues, one of
Mm.
those questions should
Hmm.
be, are you driving in an electric car?
Oh,
And if the
wow.
answer is yes, then they should reach out to me immediately
Okay.
because I don't want to say here on what
Right.
what
On a public radio show.
on a public radio of which ones you have to look out for. But I
Good to
heard
know.
that people who have like more so men, that once again surrounded by battery powered automobiles,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, could have prostate issues.
Okay. Well, and then there's, some studies showing the decrease or nil sperm counts related to
Right.
cell phones and pockets and things like
That's
that. And
right.
then now we've got other causes, we will not say what publicly here, other causes that are causing all sorts of fertility issues or potentially could be causing fertility issues related to the recommendations post-pandemic. So lots of different traumas, and even
There
just,
are.
yeah,
I
just
have in my
conversations.
office, and I just showed it because I just had a mother bring her her teenage daughters, very athletic
Mm,
in sports, and then these daughters are on their phones, and I
yeah.
showed them, look, you cannot put these cell phones, do not put these cell phones. There's mine by your breast tissue
Yep.
because there's a couple of studies that show breast cancer that's rectangular in shape
Yeah.
because no, and I have that article, and then if
Oh,
your
that's great.
listeners want, I'll try to
Sure.
find it, send it to you. You can send it to them. We want these devices off your body. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can show you this on the back of mine. I do have this filter. I sell these out of my office, and that helps to convert some of that EMF radiation and bleed it off as red light. So there's some
Mm,
things that you should put on. This is the
okay.
one that I use on my
Yeah, it's
phones.
different from the ones I've used. So yeah, always open to checking other ones out from people we trust. So thank you so much for that. So You know, so how did you kind of go from being a chiropractor to doing the,
ETRT.
ETRT? Yes, I thought I'd memorize that, but obviously not. ETRT. There we go.
ETRT. Um, I'm going to say that chiropractic, and when you add muscle testing consciousness to chiropractic, is the gateway to energetic healing.
Okay.
When I was in my second semester at chiropractic college, we had the only time that this doctor did it, he had a Dr. Scott Walker is his name, and he developed the neuro-emotional technique, NET. And so he had a seminar on campus. I think it was the only time that he actually had his seminar, which is usually hotels and international. He actually hosted it on campus. So I attended with an associate and a bunch of other people. And he sort of talks about and describes how emotions, where they sort of reside, because these are all frequencies. And they sort of, I believe that they sort of first get us in our auric field, but then they'll get deeper, deeper, deeper. And then our acupuncture meridian system, which is like a wireless system of the body, um, will will get affected. And for example, and then different emotions, I'll say different emotions are different frequencies, and they'll reside in different organ meridians. Like lungs are grief, the energy of grief. So if someone has a tremendous grief, might start having a lung related issue. And then liver gallbladder is related to anger and resentment. So each organ system has a resonant frequency. And so he sort of explained that. And then we started doing what's muscle testing to think that you know what that is and have people think about some trauma in their past. And then if it goes weak, there's a procedure to start releasing that. Now, what my book talks about indirectly is that we're going to break down these traumas into two different kinds of sub-traumas.
Mm.
So even though I call the book emotional trauma release technique, the majority of uh, our trauma is shock trauma. And then I find that the minority of the trauma then falls into the other category of actually true emotional trauma. And then you deal with shock trauma, releasing it differently.
Mm.
So that's what's different about my book than all the other books that I've seen out there in the world of releasing trauma. They really don't make that distinction between shock trauma and then emotional trauma of how you feel about how the event happened to you.
Aha.
You know, for example, let's say you get into a car accident, there's the energy of the impact. That's a
Right.
shock trauma resonating through your body, causing
Right.
that whiplash and concussion, and then there's emotions of why me? I can't have this now, and all the other things that come in. But a lot of trauma, uh, if you start looking at it that way, then well, we have the answers in my book, more so for the shock trauma, and then really just and then what I also find out is that these traumas like disconnect. So in a sense, like your body and your soul, like if your body's not safe to be in, your soul will maybe try to jump out, and people have these out of body experiences. So it depends on how big the traumatic event is, and is your body safe to be in inside? And then what we want to do is try to make your body safe. So we want to remove as much trauma so your body and your soul can be one.
Mm. Oh, yes. You know what? That's actually super, super relevant to many of our sensitive souls, some of whom have remembrances of lives, other lives, if you will.
Yeah,
And sometimes they're from let's just say, higher vibrational realm, and
yeah,
they've volunteered to come to here to help support humanity. They come to volunteer. Some of Dolores Cannon's work she describes. And literally being born as a human is trauma for some of these people.
For some
They
of these
they were
people,
just
right?
like, yeah,
Right.
they're like, wait, I came from love and light, and now I don't remember anything from why they don't even remember that they volunteered. All they know is they feel alone. They're in this body that doesn't actually work because they don't know how to work a human body, right? It's actually very interesting how many people have that as a trauma response. That would be one of the shock responses.
Right. Right. Uh, and that's, yeah, there's a big forgetting, but also sometimes whenever you're born, it's not in a loving way, you know. Uh,
Yeah, and that makes it worse for
in
sure.
I did a seminar in July, and a lady uh, came up to me at this seminar, and she had a palsy. One of her hands was really
Mm.
contracted, and the story told to her was that she had polio from birth. And I looked at her and I go, no, no, I think you got injured by the doctor through the birth canal, and I think he induced a palsy. And the way I said that, because I worked on her once, and she was able to start releasing that tension. So I
Mm.
worked on her at that event, and she was already able to get more use out of it. And if she really had a true polio, then my work wouldn't have been dramatic like that.
Gotcha. That's interesting. And you mentioned about the shock. I wanted to go back to that just for a moment. The couple other areas where I've heard it described, the body code. Dr. Bradley Nelson talks about shock, that shock energy, and then
Uh-huh.
also in German New Medicine, Dr. Hammer from Germany had described there's different. He calls them conflict shocks. So this is a shock the psyche interprets it a certain way. There's a ping to the brain, and whatever organs connected to that now has some resolution, and sometimes the cancer or whatever disease occurs is actually part of the healing process. And so your work doing what it does, helping to release that shock energy, would be super helpful in helping people resolve some of these age-old things that have been possibly plaguing them or left unresolved, causing symptoms.
Right. In fact, in my book on page 34, I do talk about German New Medicine.
Mm,
And I do a little hats off to Dr. Hans there. And he was so far ahead of his time that
totally.
I think he was definitely ostracized for that. Let's see, Dr. Hammer,
Dr. Hammer, yes. I
Dr.
just heard
Hammer,
from one
right?
of his students that he had 18 assassination attempts. But he's
Wow.
now deceased. Now, I don't think from that,
Right.
but there was something really
Well, I
special
mean,
about what he said.
right, sure. Yeah, so I'll just read from page 34 of the book a little bit. So, in his research, Dr. Hammer discovered that every disease, even a heart attack, stroke, or cancer, is controlled from a specific area in the brain and linked to a very particular identifiable, quote, conflict shock. And then in the case of a serious disease, Dr. Hammer found that without exception, he could trace the development, for example, like a cancer, to a severe emotional shock, especially one for which the person was not total, for which the person was totally unprepared. And then furthermore, he says he discovered that every shock leaves a dark shadow on the brain, which was confirmed in every case by a brain scan. So as you said, that there's a little pin for every that
Yeah.
marks every little trauma in the brain. So
And it's
then,
amazing we don't teach that in medical school. Like it's
oh yeah,
crazy.
right, right,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're only looking for certain things, and if we're not looking for that pattern, it's never reported on the brain scan. They never
No, I
see
think
that.
right. So I know that Dr. Hammer's work is phenomenal. I haven't read much on it, but it's really just fascinating and
Yeah,
worth
that's
looking
neat.
into. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for including that in your book.
Yep.
So run us through some of the key concepts that you share in ETRT, like in terms of what it can do. Maybe tell a few stories. You're really good at sharing some stories, and then how people can start using this for themselves. Because your book is really an empowerment book, not just a lecture.
That's true. Right. It's a self-help book. It's not just a lecture book. So here's a couple of premises. So one, that we're whole and complete. God has created us beautiful beings that are whole and complete. And trauma sort of separates us from that whole and completeness. So
Mm.
how do you sort of want to recomplete ourselves in each other? Uh, the body has a feedback mechanism, just like everyone drives a car that has a check engine light. So if that check engine light goes off in your car, the car still runs, but doesn't run as efficiently uh, as if it actually would have had that check engine light off. So you take your car and you take it to your mechanic, and they have a scan tool they plug into the port, usually underneath the dashboard, and then it scans what's the problem here, and it tells you a problem, and whatever sensor's off or whatever's going on in the car, it'll give you that scan. Now the human body has the same feedback system. Now in acupuncture, you can feel the pulses. If you're iridology, you'll look at the iris. It'll tell you. If you listen, the body will tell you. So besides just signs and symptoms, doctor, I can't move this way, or I have little, blotches on my skin. Where did that come from? And then I use muscle testing as my main tool for feedback to find out and the body will tell me tons of answers. Let's see. I just worked on a friend and colleague, Dr. Nick Delgado. Now, he actually takes a couple drops of your blood, puts it under a microscope, and it'll tell you what's going on in your body by looking at the quality of your blood, the different
Mm-hmm.
white blood cells that are there. In fact, February, in Los Angeles, they have the Conscious Life Expo.
Right.
And him and I are going to be sharing a booth at the Conscious Life Expo. And what we're talking about is, look, this is the OG. I'm trained with the nervous system. He's trained at looking at your blood under a microscope. I think it's a great win-win. And let's go back to the basics instead of, oh, here, what's the newest hype? What's the newest peptide, which is really just an amino acid,
Mm-hmm.
what's the newest peptide? What's the newest stem cell? Look, stem cells are fascinating, but what they do is they're trying to get you reset, so your cells aren't talking right. Let's see if we can inject you with some progenitor cells and see if it'll hit the reset button.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's an expensive way. I think it's a little more inexpensive to use the emotional trauma release technique and then proper nutrition to help reset the body. You see, I mean, I would say, why go really expensive and look, these things are $5,000 and up for some of these procedures on stem cells. And I think it's sort of new age. It's sort of new age. It's been around for a while now, but it's still
Well,
new
and
age.
there were some, yeah, and there's definitely some problems, right? Like there was this one doctor that's been on a bunch of telesummits. We find out later she's not even a doctor. She
Oh,
pretended to have a PhD, but she never finished it. And there was a documentary that followed that case, and but
oh,
nobody knew, and so she's actually training chiropractors how to do the stem cell stuff. Come to find out, the actual the ingredients, whatever, there were cases of incredible infection. People lost parts of their lives because of the complications from that. So it was all about the money, but the unsuspecting chiropractors that she had trained, they didn't know. I mean, she just put Dr. So and so, right, and trained them on how to inject blah blah blah, and they just trusted that whatever they were given and are buying was actually real. And then, according to one guy, said that a third of stem cell injections don't work. Another third, it works to some degree, and another third that there's actually a negative response, and that is not great odds. Um, especially if you're like, okay, so it's illegal to like treat the person's stem cells and put it back in them. All you're allowed to do is to concentrate them and inject them back. So there's a limit there. And if you're using, non-autologous stem cells, like, umbilical cord or whatever, is it possible that you might be injecting somebody else's bad DNA or something, right? Like there's this concerns. Of course, I the only reason I have any knowledge of that at all is because I sell a product that is a phototherapy, non-invasive product that helps your body make your own stem cells and
Oh,
make it younger and healthier by activating GHK copper peptide. We just talked about peptides. So, so it's like top of mind because you're right. Like so many people are like so into this thing now, but with your technique and being empowered, you don't have to spend $5,000, right, to reset the body.
right. I mean, I had a good friend of mine. He collected money to have stem cells injected to his eyes because his vision was failing, and it didn't was ineffective.
Mm.
Uh, I had, and then so like, what do I hear that you have some statistics? So what is the number? What is the percentage of successes? Because you said that one third
Yeah, it's about
get
one
injured more.
third.
So
It's about one third. Actually, it's the inventor of the patch. He was doing a lecture, so I was writing down notes because he
oh,
had
okay.
gone to all these different conventions and things like that. And he
Yeah.
was quoting another scientist whose name I don't remember at the moment. I said, "Where'd you get that number, David?" And he said, "Oh, from so and so, right?" And then he linked it so that he heard from him that a third of the stem cell therapies, the injectable ones we're talking about, we're not talking about
Sure.
phototherapy, but the invasive
Right.
ones, that one third doesn't
Yeah.
do anything, one third there's a harm, and one third that actually help.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
33%. So roughly a
yes,
third.
very low.
Right. I would say that, my therapies are over 90% effective. I mean,
Nice,
it's
nice.
and then, for that 10%, I mean, I have someone he's got a very hot low back. He says that whenever he stands up, it's shooting pain. He's limping, but whenever he's sitting, um, it's better. I go, well, I think you're a surgical candidate. I think you have a disc. Let's get that MRI ordered and let's have a look. Um, so
Hmm.
I probably have he'd be of limited benefit to me. But I'll tell you, speaking about that, a lot of times people have low back pain, and it's actually more often than not, it's actually a sacroiliac joint injury. And no doctor talks about sacroiliac joint injury. And it's a low to moderate, sometimes acute pain, but it doesn't travel down the legs. So, but it just hangs out there and they don't know what to do. And I'm very successful with fixing those. But it mimics, they call it sciatica, and it mimics, but it's not traveling. It doesn't radiate. And
Right.
the
We in
majority, and
the
I'll tell you, and I also, and then so if you really can have a disc herniation, chances are you have a disc herniation and a sacroiliac joint issue. So I can at least help you with the sacroiliac joint, and then leave the orthopedic surgeon or the neurologist for the disc issue.
Well, and then I've heard from other people we've had on the podcast that, for example, the iliacus muscle is not really talked about. Everyone's talking about the
Right?
psoas, right? Psoas this, psoas that. But the iliacus muscle is actually really difficult to access unless you know what you're doing. And so one of the podcaster guests that we had, Christine Koth, actually made a little device, was this almost like emulates a thumb that goes inside the pelvic bowl to release
Oh
that. Now,
yeah.
of course, we're not talking about some of the deeper, in terms of emotional release, which is really, really important that we're talking about today. But I think it's very curious how there's so many different back pains out there. There's piriformis syndrome and there's herniated disc. And I've heard from other experts that, one of the reasons that, people herniated disc in the first place is their, fascia is inflamed and tight. And then the reason for that is because they got leaky gut. And then you got to fix that because they're taking GMO foods. And like the list goes on and on.
Well, how about this? How about you have a sacroiliac injury, and then you have the psoas iliacus tighter on one side than the other side, so it causes a torque on the pelvis,
Right. Yeah.
and then walking around with that over time, puts a
Yep.
torque on the lower lumbar spine, and
Right.
then that puts a torque on the discs, and oh, there you
Absolutely.
go, and then here's a herniation. So
Right. And the general medical, doctors will take the x-ray or the MRI or whatever and just diagnose that, okay, well, here's the structural issue. You got to get it fixed. But if we don't deal with all the other stuff, including the emotional stuff, including the trauma, right? There's a propensity to repeat the same thing. The same imbalances are there. They're actually not fixed by just doing surgery.
well, they're not. In fact, look, a lot of time it's there's a miscommunication. Why is the psoas or psoas iliacus not firing correctly on one side versus the other side? And that's where I come in. I like to call myself the body's electrician. You bring the
I
electrician
like
out.
that.
How come? I have a short circuit. I see. It stopped working. So they go and they'll put a meter on it. They'll trace the line back and see what's going on. So I'm trying to look on my little notes here. Like, for example, like your hamstring muscles are not just related to the L4, L5 nerves, but they're also related to the large intestine meridian. So if I do muscle testing, people are laying down and their hamstrings don't get tight, don't get strong. Excuse me, let me back up. Let's say they're weak. Then I'll put a support brace around their sacroiliac joint, see if that strengthens it. Usually that strengthens the majority of the cases. But then if it still doesn't, then I'm going to have them touch their two index fingers together. And so what, as an acupuncturist, tell me what the two
Large
index
intestine
fingers,
meridians.
yeah. And then miraculously, their muscle test on the hamstring gets stronger, and they go, "How did
Oh, I
that
haven't done
happen?"
that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you ever seen somebody and they have their hamstrings aren't firing, and then a lot of muscles have that. I believe the psoas muscle, psoas and iliacus muscle are related to the kidney meridian.
Oh, kidney?
So
Okay.
if those muscles are weak, if that psoas iliacus is not firing, why not? If it doesn't, and then I'll check the hard wiring, the nervous system, and then if it's still sort of weak, then I can have them check. One is touch their forehead, and that's the emotional reflex points. If there's an emotion associated with that muscle, then holding this part will make that muscle go strong.
Mm.
And then if not, then the kidney meridian, and kidney one is the bottom of the foot, and then there's so many other places to check on the kidney meridian. It's a very long meridian system.
Oh,
So
so
just
do
like
you check each point then for and muscle test them?
I like to first I'll go to the beginning and end points.
Okay, okay.
So I'll check. So if they have a weak psoas muscle, then I'll touch kidney one and see if it strengthens. If it strengthens, well
Mm.
then I'll keep on the meridian. If it doesn't, then I'll go to something else. So
Okay. Yeah, so I was just curious how people potentially could test themselves if they could self muscle test, but of course there's not somebody, touching their kidney one.
yeah, we'd have to teach a class. We'd have to get together a bunch of people and put
Yeah.
a workshop together, and people would pair up, and we'd show them how to start doing this. Certainly you can do some things on your own, but then a lot of things you just got to do with a partner.
Okay, okay. Yeah, in
So
my
you'll
healing modality, we actually ask how happy is and then fill in the blank. So if we tune into source, inner wisdom and how happy is kidney one, like we'd have to be that specific, mind you, and we could actually say how happy it is and they could know. And we've had, people adjust themselves with various different questions like that, just knowing, being very, very specific. The
Mhm.
alternative, I thought, Dr. Jeff, was, maybe one of these phototherapy patches, if somebody says, okay, I have an iliacus issue, or they know that that's the issue, then perhaps they put one of the phototherapy patches on kidney one and then
Uh-huh.
remuscle test, see if that changes, or kidney
That's
27.
true. Are we talking about like the X39 patches
Yeah,
or
it could be
something?
actually 9, it could be Eon, I mean, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. That could potentially work.
Yeah, I would have to experiment to see. I have homework
An
to do.
experiment, right?
So tell us about this chart that's in here.
Ah,
Handy
okay.
chart. Yeah, page 111, which is a
Hey,
angel
page
number.
page 111. So I'm not sure if you can hold it up so they can see. And I could also try to send you a PDF of that, so people who would want to get a copy of that on their own as a little gift for tuning in,
Ooh, that's exciting.
we can send them that. And then
Nice.
they can of course get the book on Amazon. That's where it's
Okay, yeah. So we get the book on Amazon, and can you just share the website and your two websites as well?
oh, okay. So I have yeah, www.etrt.org, emotional trauma release technique.org. And then we also have lighttouchhealingcenter.com.
Okay.
So if they want to learn more about me, I have a lot of YouTube videos. If you go to
Mm,
YouTube and plug in Light Touch Healing Center, you can go to my channel. So subscribe. I always add a couple new things, maybe once a month, once every 2 months,
okay, great.
as I get things done and uploaded.
And we have
And
another website that we have on our sheet here called Houdini of Healing. What's that?
yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Um, in Hollywood, everyone's got to have a presence. So,
Right, right, right.
so
Yeah, if you're an MD or DC or whatever, that's not sexy enough, apparently. You have to
no,
have stuff.
no, you gotta put a cape on.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Houdini of healing. Yes,
Yeah, that's good. I used to live
I
in LA, so
yeah, it's a Hollywood thing. We gotta self
it
promote
is.
in an original kind of way. So
Oh,
yes,
so true. So
so
true.
yeah, so HoudiniofHealing.com will get you there to the same place as well.
Okay, so would you mind running through kind of on that page 111 what's on that
Oh,
assessment sheet?
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
thanks.
Okay, there we go. So so this is my emotional trauma release technique worksheet. See if they'll see that. And what it asks you to do, there's a chart. Now this chart is um, it's like a stress chart, and 0
Mm,
is none, and then 10 is agonizing or unbearable
okay.
distress. And what I have people write out is write out a painful memory, you know, write a painful memory out, and then I want you to rate that painful memory on a scale from 0 to 10. And so that's why I have that chart there, so you have a basis of how you're writing it out. And then they're going to write that number from 0 to 10, put it there, and then they'll go through some of the instructions, which I highlight on page 107, is called Performing the Emotional Trauma Release Technique Process Step by Step. So
Okay.
you write that out. You write out your memory number one, you put a number on it, and then you you're going to think about that event. You're going to take a breath in and tilt your head back like this. Exhale, come forward. Do it a few times with your eyes open, and
Hmm.
do it a few times with your eyes closed. And then you're going to repeat that while tapping your heart chakra. So thinking about
Mm,
that event, tap your heart chakra with your eyes open and eyes closed, and taking a breath in taking a breath in as you tilt your head back. The exhale as you come forward. Do that a few times, and then clear your mind for a moment, and then think about that painful memory again, and see if it's maybe just a little bit lighter. So then you just rate yourself on 0 to 10 and see if what the number is there.
oh,
Chances are it'll be less.
neat. And then somebody was going to ask, I'm sure, Dr. Benton, how does this differ from your traditional EFT?
Now, I believe EFT has you think about events and tap meridian points. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Right. So, in fact, if you have some of your listeners that have done a lot of EFT and they still have some remnant discomfort or an emotion, then you should try this.
Mm.
So EFT has you stimulate specific meridian points, and I haven't. Are you well read on that? Do you know what meridian points you tap whenever you're thinking about events or emotions?
Yeah, they have a various different ways of doing it. Most people will, the simple way is like, even though I feel angry, I totally and completely lovingly accept, love and accept myself. And so, yeah, it apparently Daniel Benor, for example, worked with kids, inner city kids, and in these housing units, and they were too embarrassed, to tap their face and all that. So he just had them tap wherever, and it
Wherever.
seemed to always work. He called it the WHEE technique, WHEE. I don't actually remember what it stands for. I actually, when I do some of the web work, I actually had shared with people to tap here because it seems to work for many people. And
Oh,
then
tap where? I couldn't see that
just
on
on
the
the
phone.
heart. Yeah, on
Yeah,
the
tap
heart.
the heart
Yeah.
chakra. I think tapping the heart chakra is one of the main um,
Yeah, but you've
one of the main
included the
places.
breath work, right? So when we're breathing in, are we breathing in through the nose or the mouth, or it doesn't matter?
I prefer the nose, but I
Me
think
too.
breathing is just getting the breath in. Yeah.
Okay.
So then you add tapping the heart chakra with the breath. No, I spoke in front of several medical conferences, and the most recent one was 2019 down in San Diego, and I had brought someone up, and they were really having a very difficult time getting they're like one of their best friends. And they were in a relationship, very very close person, and they passed away, and they just couldn't
Mm.
get beyond it. And I had them, and they're like their heart chakra or the crown chakra were just offline, and and I just it was quick. I mean, it took like a minute or 2 minutes to do that, and then she walked up to me after my seminar, my presentation finished. He goes, I don't know what you did, but I so shifted. I just really shifted. And the same thing happened when I was at Obscuram, uh, obscuram.com. And this past July, I had a lady come up and says, can you help me? I was sexually assaulted, I think age 13. And
Mm.
she was carrying that with her. And now it's, 40 years later, let's see. So I had to think about that event, put a number on it. But what's really interesting is since we were recording it, I had her look at the camera so we see a before picture video and then an after video. And you can see her get um, more, her energy shifted from hesitation to stepping back into her femininity. And she actually admitted, she goes, yes, I noticed that I became more masculine after this event happened as a protective mechanism,
Yeah.
and you can see her femininity come back out. So you can,
That's
and
beautiful.
what I love about that is because whenever you film it, you can really see it happening.
Yeah,
And
that's
and then
really cool.
and then a few hours later, she goes, I don't know what you did. I am still processing, and I feel phenomenal. So,
Oh, nice. That's great. Now, if somebody did know how to muscle test themselves, is there any way to incorporate muscle testing in the ETRT technique by learning some things in the
oh, well,
book?
they can if they, So I also test myself with pushing one finger on
Yeah,
another
yeah.
finger. Yeah, so they can use that, think about that issue, what's going on with them.
How about
And
meridians?
what's that?
Can they muscle test meridians at all on their own, or is it better
Well,
to have somebody
they
else?
look, I think it's better having a partner. But look, if you don't have a partner, look, whenever I'm driving and someone cuts me off, or some road rage, I just do this. I just do the breathing technique in the car. I don't even
Oh,
um, go to the muscle testing. I
okay.
just dissolve that charge that just emanated there.
Okay, so Dr. Benton, what if they have like just a pain, but they can't associate that pain, say a painful hip, knee, back, whatever. They can't associate it with the trauma, So how would they potentially use the ETRT to pinpoint that trauma or release it?
Well, one is just say, so I have a pain in the arm, the shoulder, wherever it is, and let them put once go to the chart, put a number on it,
Okay.
and let them just go through that technique and see if it feels better. Now, what also they can do that first. If the
Mm.
pain, and then hopefully what they're going to notice is that the pain, even though it's not completely gone, the intensity has decreased. So like someone's got an energetic thorn and they
Mm.
just pulled out that thorn. So it's not completely gone, but that edge is pulled off. And then once we pull that edge off, then some of that healing can occur.
Oh, neat, neat.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So in your practice right now, like how are you seeing people? Like, are there, if people are in the LA area, want to see you, like, what's that process like?
Yeah, they call the office. We also have a texting line, but our office number is 323-297-0566. So let them call us, leave a message, or find us on the website, send us an email. Whenever you go to the website, I think we have a bot that hi, how can I help you, and sort of helps
Hmm.
you just get that scheduled.
Okay.
So
Okay. And then, do you see people on Zoom at all, or is it more like one-on-one in person?
I've done it on Zoom. I've done it on Zoom. I've done it over the phone. I think I like the impact of being face to face,
Right,
at
right.
least for the first session, and then if we go traveling, then we have that connection, and then we can do
Hmm.
things distant, distant healing. Yeah,
Okay, that's
because
great.
we're all connected that way.
Very true, very true. Yeah. Are there any, final thoughts, last words, words of wisdom that you want to share?
You know, uh, keep your head up. The world is an amazing place, and the world is the world. Um, there's a lot of trauma going out there. Having more tools in your pocket to help release the trauma quickly, efficiently, um, non-medicinally, I think you're better off.
Hmm.
So, keep smiling. And if you can't smile, well, then do some emotional trauma release technique or talk
Yeah,
to a
that.
friend and do it together.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so the book is on Amazon, everyone. So it's the Emotional Trauma Release Technique, the Ultimate System for Releasing Life Traumas, and page 111 is that chart. But of course, if you're listening to this, Dr. Benton is going to also give us a PDF version of that, which is very kind. Thank you so much. And then check out the website at etrt.org or lighttouchhealingcenter.com. And remember, Dr. Benton is on YouTube. Check out the Light Touch Healing Center on YouTube, and a lot of the information is there as well. Dr. Benton, it's been a great pleasure interviewing you today. Thank you so much for your wisdom and sharing your light with the world.
Thank you for having me. Are you going to be back at the Consciousness Expo next January?
Well, that's a great question. I was hoping to, and then realized that was the same time I'm supposed to be competing at the World Winter Olympic Games. Sorry, the World Winter Masters Games, which is like the Olympics for old people, which is once every 4 years. So have not quite made that decision yet.
Oh,
But
well,
are you going to be there?
what are you competing in? I think I am. I think
Okay,
it
okay.
was a great event.
It was. It was really
I
fun.
sort of showed up last minute. I was working on a lovely lady there who was suffered for over a decade. It was a boating accident and caused a burst fracture of her lumbar vertebra, and she was in a wheelchair there, and I came out from one of the breaks. I left some of my books on the table, and she goes, I think God brought you here because you're the next step in
Mm,
my healing. So we started working on her right then and there, and she had some dramatic shifts right
nice.
there at the event. So it's
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll see how it goes. I really really enjoyed it last year.
yeah,
So that'd be really cool if we met up again.
yes, very
And
good.
Yeah. So, hint, hint, folks, Dr. Jeff might be there at the event. So you want to meet him in person, maybe come to the Consciousness Conference. And of course, phone and use the little chat function on the website, ETRT.org or lighttouchhealingcenter.com, where you can find Dr. Benton. And thanks everyone, all my community, for listening in, tuning in. And please remember to share this if you have found it helpful and supportive for your own journey. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Benton. Until next time, big love to everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Bye for now.
Good. Bye for now.